One of the things they were looking for was the turning point in your life where you became an activist. And I never really knew when that was. I was just kind of doing things all along.
William J. Anderson's essay, The Evolution of an Activist, was given the lead position in Turning Points. Turning Points, Discovering Meaning and Passion in Turbulent Times, is an anthology of essays about experiences that have sparked various writers and poets to shine light on our troubled world and sometimes to move beyond the quill, the typewriter, and the keyboard. Bill and his family live in Champlin. When not writing, he's in sales and engineering for a company that makes circuit boards. Bill is a member of the Peace and Social Justice group of writers at the Loft in Minneapolis. This is his first time at the table, so welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So I'm curious, you have position number 1 in the book. I know your name starts with an A, but what compelled you to write about Turning Points?
The request for submissions for the anthology came out at about the same time I was taking a class at Anoka Ramsey Community College on creative nonfiction. I had written poetry for a long time, written some fiction. I really hadn't spent any time yet writing nonfiction. So with the class pushing me, and at the same time this request for submissions came through, it seemed like the appropriate time to try one. I was fairly happy with it. I got an A on the essay, and I sent it in, and it was accepted. The things people asked for during the civil rights movement seemed perfectly reasonable and completely understandable once I got past the fact that what they were asking for should have already been theirs. After all, this was America, and we'd been around for more than 180 years, and slavery had already been abolished for a century. I watched the stories about the marches and felt that right was being proven by the nonviolent natures of the activists. And when they were met with violence and didn't respond in kind, it enhanced the image that the activists were on the correct path, the high road. After a while, I heard stories about separate entrances and drinking fountains, the Freedom Riders, lynchings, church bombings, and murders, and was appalled that a progressive and knowledgeable nation could be so entrenched in hate and ignorance. Again, it all went against what our country had been based on since its birth, especially since I had such a difficult time seeing the differences in people. To me, we were all human and all animals. It would be like hating a chameleon when he blended into the brown couch, but loving him when he blended in with the green curtains. It's the same chameleon. Deep down, we're all the same animal, too.
You call the essay Evolution of an Activist. Tell us about your own evolution here.
One of the things they were looking for was the turning point in your life where you became an activist. And I never really knew when that was. I was just kind of doing things all along. And I had spent some time doing park cleanup. I had spent a lot of time doing writing, asking lots of questions. Spent a lot of time trying to get better as a writer. I like to write poetry about music. Music has always been incredibly important to me. Having lived close to the Mississippi River my entire life, that's an important subject for me, so it keeps showing up in my poetry. Just about anything political seems to raise the hair on the back of my neck and inspire a poem.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Anoka.
That's not that far away, is it?
No, it isn't.
Near the Mississippi?
Within walking distance.
Between the Rum River and the Mississippi?
We spent a lot of time at the Rum, too. That was also just a few blocks away.
Sure.
So pretty much right there in that corner.
So you led kind of maybe a Huck Finn or Tom Sawyer or life?
As I was working on things about the river, I really had to start doing a lot of self-analysis. I figured out one day that in spite of having lived that close and absolutely loving it and hanging around by it a lot, I really hadn't spent any time on it or in it. I'm actually afraid of water. So it started as an exploration of the Mississippi River, and it really quickly turned into an exploration of my fear. So just takes its own life and runs away.
It's driven a lot of great writers, that's for sure.
It has.
You still live in that area too,
Yeah.
up in Champlin.
Yeah.
Bill, okay, so you didn't become a Tom Sawyer or a Huck Finn on the banks of the Mississippi,
No.
but you are a member and grew up in the television generation.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. How many hours and hours of your life have you wasted watching television?
Oh, geez. Countless. Yeah, I could have written a lot more. Part of it was it fed into a shorter attention span, a need for action. But at the same time, my mom was still throwing us out to go play outside, and we played a lot of baseball and stuff in the yard. But I'd come back in and there'd be Walter Cronkite on the news. And it was like he was giving the weekly score of the Vietnam War. This would have been 68. I was 11 years old, and that was like the worst year of the Vietnam War. And he just kept giving the casualty figures. And
We don't have any Walter Cronkites or those newsmen of the past anymore. We have a fractured media. We get news from everywhere. We get fake news. What's your take on how the media is handling really serious issues in the Middle East, with climate change, with the divisions in Washington, D.C., and here in Minnesota?
the immediacy is good. The number of outlets that are covering the stories, I think, are beneficial. I don't know necessarily that we're getting whole stories yet. I worry about getting both sides of the stories. And I worry too, are we also getting too many opinions versus the facts and the evidence that we really need to see in order to make an informed decision on our own.
Is that something writers can deal with, can help out?
Yeah, I believe it is. If we can, I guess, take a little more journalistic approach, or at least in our own writing, find a way to separate our opinions from whatever facts we have to convey for that particular job or that particular piece.
So, Bill, how did your evolution as an activist writer change with, say, 9/11, Afghanistan, the Mideast?
I think my fear level crept up quite a bit. I really hoped we wouldn't do anything too rash. I did write some, for what would be for me fairly patriotic things. I tried memorializing the people we lost as best I could. But I probably started writing faster about political choices and how they were made. I really question a lot of the wisdom behind too many of them.
Give some examples.
Well, right off the bat, going into Afghanistan, the question I was asking was, did we learn nothing from Vietnam, and did we learn nothing from the Soviets' experience in Afghanistan? Did we really know what we were getting ourselves into, and was it really necessary to do? And I didn't really get a good answer there.
The same with the Mideast, with Iraq.
Right. Really felt the same way. And then I've just kind of watched us creep into other things that we shouldn't be doing. I knew about the Peace and Social Justice Writing Group at the Loft for a number of years before I actually joined it. What I was hoping for was to meet more people, become a little more active, and hopefully improve my writing even more. I found great inspiration with these guys, or with the whole gang, and they've made me a better writer, and they've helped me actually write a lot of stuff that this is pretty indicative. This essay is pretty indicative of what I'm currently writing in that regard.
What can writers do to be more effective in America these days? A nation that is kind of looking like it's being more split up day by day. Do you write it, get it published, send a letter to the editor? I mean,
we actually spend quite a bit of time trying to talk about that and figure that out too. We have some members in the group who do spend a lot of time writing letters. We have members who spend a lot of time being activists. They're at the writing for them is kind of the secondary thing. They're usually at a protest or a fundraiser or some other kind of activity, just trying to do good work.
Mm-hmm.
I have a long essay that isn't quite ready. What I did is I actually went through a listing of all of the military actions we had engaged in my entire life. And I found there were only 2 years in my 60 years where we were not engaged in some military action somewhere. It was 1977 and 1979.
Carter was president.
Carter was president at the time.
Yeah.
When I told my daughters about what I had found, they both said, that means there's never been a single year of peace in our entire lifetime. And that really scared me a lot.
Bill, thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Turning Points is edited by Jacqueline Mascio and Lorenz Peters. Here's where to find it.
Turning Points, Discovering Meaning and Passion in Turbulent Times is available at www.changingtimespress.com or at Changing Times Press on Facebook. The Peace and Social Justice Writers Group at the Loft Literary Center can be contacted at www.loft.org and on Facebook. Democratic Visions is handcrafted by volunteers from Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington. Watch us on select cable systems and on our YouTube channel. This is Carol Sundstrom.